Blog number 34. Once I was a teenager. After my brief and colorful stint as a preteen, the next logical step was to become a teenager and attend high school. Actually, it was something about which I really didn't have a choice, because if I had, I probably would have skipped that part. I entered high school 35 years ago, and although I have my own 30 kids who have graduated from the institution within the last several years, I am not very well informed with the current mindset of the modern high school student. All that I really know is that in my day, the mature and current high school student was seemingly obsessed with toilet humor. I mentioned in the first part of my blog, Once I Was a Child, that a large part of freshman hazing by the older students involved pushing a penny around a toilet seat with your nose, either as a solo act or as part of a race. This race was largely similar to a potato sack race, with a toilet instead of a sack and a penny instead of a rope around your ankle. And actually, now that I think about it, pushing a penny with your nose around a toilet seat really didn't involve jumping either, unless, of course, your coach was standing in the bathroom stall behind you while you knelt in front of the toilet, and he would kick you in the backside, urging you onto greater speed because the other guy was making the wide turn at the top of the seat and you were still on the first leg. So in looking back at the moment, I would have to say that referring to these two races as largely similar was rather overstating the matter. They were only similar by the definition that they were both races. Being singled out to come face to face with the toilet seat was bad enough, but there was another reason for my trepidation for walking the halls of higher education. If you entered high school with someone in a grade or two above you that was already holding a grudge against you, then your life was pretty much over. You're being singled out for various humiliations or random acts of physical pain were no longer mere happenstance, but premeditated acts of vengeance. We are now at the place where I re-enter the story because I had such a personal attendant. His name was Steve, and he was a junior when I entered as a freshman. The only explanation that I could come up with for Steve not being my biggest fan was possibly because his sister was in my class and she definitely was a fan. But I was indifferent towards her and probably just a little bit cruel, if truth be told, because I was just too cool, or so I thought. I say that this is a possible explanation, but who really knows? Maybe someday I'll figure it out. Except for the few of the one-sided good times that I had with Steve, life while attending high school my first year was really not too bad. I would be standing by my locker with several friends, and a few of them would win the lottery and be selected to answer for their crime of having dared to enter the halls of teenage education. The imagined trespass was swiftly and sometimes harshly dealt with in one creative way or another, and even though I had friends and acquaintances who had to push a penny, I never did, nor did I ever get involved in or invited to have a face-to-face interaction with a toilet seat. All that happened from Monday through Friday, but the weekends were a different story altogether. There was a time during my sophomore year that one of my friends decided to drive 5 of us guys to the drive-in theater on a Saturday night. Some of the local theaters charged a flat rate per car, no matter how many people you had in the car, and others would charge a few dollars for each passenger. Well, we decided on the movie that we wanted to see and realized that it was showing at a theater that charged a per customer fee. So being the socially responsible and civil-minded teenagers that we were, we decided to take the friend's family station wagon that night so that we could smuggle 3 of us in the back, thereby successfully avoiding the cover charge, saving us a collective total of $9. Of course, the driver and his passenger had to pay, but the $6 were absorbed by everyone. I don't remember a lot of details of the events that happened during the movie, but I will never forget the after part. It was about 1 a.m. in the morning, and we decided that it would be in order to light some M80 firecrackers in a few quiet neighborhoods and wake some people up. We thought that it might even be a fun idea to put a few in a random mailbox and blow it up. My friends told me that the M80 was a quarter stick of dynamite, but after a friend had one go off underneath his foot, I was skeptical. Oh, they were large, and the explosion was impressive, but I'm sure that he would have lost his foot if the M80s were really a quarter stick of dynamite. The way this all came about was as follows. I was riding in the front seat with the driver, and the others were in the back. The 3 in the back seat were rather cramped as they were pretty big kids. We had just started the early morning entertainment, and the boy in the middle of the back seat was going to be the first one to light one of the large firecrackers and toss it out of the window. He proceeded to light it, waited for a second while it burned halfway down the fuse, and then tossed it at the side window, where it promptly hit the doorpost and bounced right back in between his legs. Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, there was some very frantic activity as the boy in the middle tried to stand up to get away from the burning bomb, and the other boys tried to help, but at the same time get as far away as possible, which really was only a few inches. The driver attempted to pull over and stop, while all the action in the back seemed to be happening in slow motion. That is, until about 1 second later, when there was a muffled explosion under the foot of the kid in the middle, who had managed to step on the firecracker while it was still burning, and now was between his foot and the seat. The explosion was loud in the confines of the car, and the small face was instantly filled with smoke and floating seat stuffing. The firecracker had blown a rather large hole in the back seat, and when we were able to stop, the hapless victim hobbled out of the car, hopping around, howling in pain and shock as his foot smoked, and we waited for the car to air out. I suppose the guy was lucky that something soft was under his foot when the explosion went off, because it appeared that a large portion of the blast was absorbed by the car seat. After my first 2 years at public high school, I transferred to a rather small private school. What do I mean by small? I went from a school of about 2,000 kids to a school of about 120. There were several reasons for doing this. One was that it was a school that my dad had attended, and I really enjoyed the stories he would tell of his experiences and adventures while there. Another was that it just seemed to be a better fit for me. I was somewhat lost in a big student body, and actually I was kind of a timid kid. I also had an innocent face and a demeanor about me, which meant that I could mastermind a lot of mischief and not be a suspect. A good example of this happened during my junior year. I was in my 4th period U.S. history class, and we were going to be shown a movie that day. Now, in the early 80s, there was nothing that even remotely resembled digital media, but classroom movies involved a projector on a large metal cart and reels of film. The full reel was mounted on the front of the projector. The film wound its way through where the image was cast onto a large viewing screen, and then the film was taken up and rewound onto a take-up reel mounted on the back end of the projector. The empty take-up reel system usually worked flawlessly, unless, of course, somebody had put a pencil into one of the holes in the empty reel, resulting in a pile on the floor because the take-up reel no longer was able to spin freely. I did just such a thing that day in fourth period U.S. history. I was served well by my innocent luck because even though I was the one who was sitting right next to the projector, and even though I was the only student clearly without a pencil, meaning there was a really good chance that the pencil used in the film caper was mine, the teacher pointedly asked several other students who had done it, but did not once look at or ask me if I had done it. Towards the end of my junior year, various students began to campaign for the next year's student council offices. I got involved in the fast-paced world of school politics by helping to run a friend's campaign, which really just involved water painting cheesy slogans on a square of white butcher paper. At the end of a brutal 3-week campaign trail, the student body would all gather at a local park for lunch and an afternoon of well-planned out candidate speeches, after which we would return to the school and the voting would begin. On the morning of the big day, about 2 hours before we all went down to the park for the speeches, one of my friends approached me and suggested that I should run for the student body president. At first I thought he was joking, and then I thought, well, why not? So I went to the park that day, stood up before the gathered students, and gave a totally impromptu speech. It must have been pretty good because I won, beating out 2 other strong opponents. I really don't know what I said, it being over 35 years ago, but I spent the 82-83 school year as the Big Cheese. Emphasis on cheese. So even though it did not cover every part of my high school career, I felt like what I shared here covered pretty much how the 4 years went for me. I will conclude this 3-part blog with my last installment titled, I Even Went On to Higher Education Once.